Hey guys, it's me, David Chitel, with you here again for another episode of Total Market Talk. Today, I am excited and pleased to announce we have a very special guest. We have Javier Farfan, who's the Vice President of Segment and Cultural Marketing at Verizon Wireless. And we're going to be covering a wide array of topics today. But before we do, I wanted Javier just to quickly introduce himself and say hello to everybody. Javier?
Hey, thank you, David. It's Javier Farfan, Vice President of Segment and Cultural Marketing here at Verizon. Excited to be here and talking about Total Market. Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you here, Javier. So let's get right into it. Tell us about your role at Verizon and what exactly is segment and cultural marketing, because that is quite broad. We'd love to hear more about your role there.
Honestly, I was brought in to run the multicultural department. But my CMO and I had a broader vision when we had our conversations about what we can do with multicultural marketing. We really want to talk about target marketing and segment marketing. That's really the name of the game. And, multicultural is just one aspect of it. So I pushed this agenda of, hey, I don't want to marginalize the multicultural opportunity. So I took multi out of it. And then added culture, so it's segment and cultural marketing. My responsibilities don't just lie within the cultural segments, the ethnic segments. I also look at young people. I look at other life stages within our customer base and seeing how we can create campaigns or initiatives around them. So when I started my career in marketing, I actually started MTV Networks, where I launched MTV Tres. So that was a totally different experience because I was in the space of media and programming. But I thought I learned a great deal about the multicultural segment in that space, launching MTV Tres, of course, and understanding the consumer. And I started creating my own point of view in that. And segregation of the segment was not the right way the consumer wanted to be perceived. So that's kind of started a little bit of this idea of total market. It wasn't called total market at that time. Then I went over to Microsoft to do some similar work, entertainment marketing, because they were looking at developing an entertainment division and how do you bring more, diversity in their, product offering and entertainment offerings. So my experience at MTV would allow that to happen. And in that, I always thought about inclusion as opposed to kind of this segregation where the marketing departments were thinking about because they wanted to monetize multicultural marketing. As we think about the advertisers and the mediums in which we go after this consumer. So there I started kind of evolving the thought process. And I didn't know it was going to be total market. I just said, hey, when you're thinking about a general market artist, think of a Latino artist in the same way. Like, why not? I listen to both. So, and, the consumer is more influencing the world more and more. And that allowed me to start getting into this conversation of changing that dialogue on multicultural marketing. And then I went over to Pepsi, and I've been very fortunate to work with people that were very progressive in the thought process, and digital had a lot to do with that. And I worked for a gentleman called Frank Cooper, who ran, who was the CMO at PepsiCo, and he believed in everything that I thought about because he comes from a digital background. He came from AOL. He also worked at a music company, so we had the right type of sensibilities. And that thought process and those ideologies has gotten me here at Verizon to do the same and similar approach, but widen my perspective, not just into multicultural, but how do you take that approach and do it with, young people? How do you do it with other life stages and really kind of give a holistic way of approaching marketing to these individuals?
Thank you for that. So it seems like, throughout your career, even though you didn't call it total marketing, you've kind of embraced this approach as opposed to many are concerned that this term total market is somewhat irresponsible to use in that it's a dangerous thing to say we're taking a strategic insight or a particular threaded approach that we're going to put across all segments. And it could be, in essence, distilling the way that we're approaching multicultural, quote unquote, marketing and maybe taking away from the nuances that need to be addressed. Do you have a point of view on that? It sounds like, you know, you're more embracing it than turning away from it.
Yeah, I'm embracing it because I know that's where the consumer is going. I mean, we have history together because you worked at Batanga and you were thinking that same way at that point in time, a very long time ago. And New Generation Latino was another way of saying what we were saying, right? It's like, hey, you know, we live multiple worlds and we appreciate a lot of different things. The challenge that I've been pushing on in this idea of multicultural is the control has been with the media companies who own the consumer and the I don't want to call it lazy, but it's not lazy. A lot of marketers are doing a lot of work and they have so much to do. Sometimes it's just easy to check the box and just say, hey, I'm addressing the consumer. The problem is the consumer now is even more connected to your brand. So you have to do a lot more engagement to do that work. And I apologize. My phone is ringing.
Yeah, I meant to tell you to silence that. Hey, viewers.
I'm at Verizon, so I can't.
That's right. We can't silence that phone. Well, we actually won't even cut that out, Hav. That was an authentic Verizon wireless moment. Shameless plug.
Exactly. Plug for Verizon Wireless, the best network.
Yes.
In America. Bienvenido a lo mejor is our welcome to the best. Better matters. That was kind of my perspective, and I always push back because, you know, the traditional way when we started going in, MTV3 wasn't given a lot of advertising support because we didn't have the volume that our traditional multicultural like media companies had. So that was a battle that I had to do from the other side, right, as being a new medium to attract this consumer. Then when I became a marketer on, you know, as looking for places to put my stuff, it was hard to find stuff to go after this consumer. What has emerged out of that is digital, you know, and there's one-to-one marketing. So that kind of dilutes a lot of the stuff that's happening. I think where it gets really interesting about total market is contextual marketing and also the idea of content creation that really talks to this audience. It's going to be very important. Yeah, I've been blessed enough to be in categories that the multicultural consumer consumes a lot more of than everybody else. So that's really the reason why I've been able to kind of say those things, because all the data shows. So it reinforces it. Technology, it reinforces it. You know, beverages, it reinforces it. You know, and here in cell phone usage and wireless, you know, consumption and telecommunication, again, it does it. So I'm able to say those bold statements because the data allows me to do that. The challenge is sometimes the organization is not ready for those things. I think everything is nonlinear anymore, and you have to think about the multidimensional aspects of connecting to the consumer. You know, and that's not just a multicultural consumer; that's every consumer now. But it's more enhanced when you're thinking about the multicultural consumer, because there's so much variety and diversity, even with that Hispanic consumer. So I think Latinos and folks within that experience that are very aware of that. But you have to experience it day to day to understand how to really get those nuggets that's going to show that you understand them and that they're going to value your brand a little bit more. So and I learned that through just my education of life. I was one of the few Latinos that grew up in West Harlem with a predominantly African American, you know, community. So there I learned, you know, what it is to appreciate different cultures at a very young age, but also appreciate my culture, you know, because it was, you know, a big part of who I was in the apartment that I lived in. Mm-hmm. And there I appreciated, you know, diversity. And then through that experience, I was able to embrace that and make that a strength of mine throughout my career. Being at Pepsi, and I think Pepsi was the one that I really kind of learned a lot about local marketing because of the distribution and the bottlers.
Mm-hmm.
You had to kind of give kind of massive uh, national campaigns that they can grab onto, but then you also had to reinforce that campaign with local tactics, and local tactics depended on the street corner or zip code that you were at. It gets to that level.
Right.
So as you think about going to downtown Houston to going to certain parts of LA, it's a very different dynamic. You know, it's the local culture that really drives that. And if you understand that local culture and you could talk to it in the right way, I think your community appreciates it very much. So, but it's a song, again, it's a balance because you have to think about the resources you have, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to think about how do you make sure that you have enough reach with your massive message, um, and really get detailed enough that it's going to really create impact at the local market. Sometimes you do a lot of too many things locally that it doesn't feel authentic enough, and it's a waste of time. But it's a balance. That's interesting because in regards to cross cultural, I talk about that topic a lot lately because I feel that looking at it in the silos of the ethnicities is another barrier to really the way the consumer engages.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm noticing is that there is a commonality between ethnic segments across the board. As you think about the Asian segment, the Hispanic segment, and the African American segment,
Mm-hmm.
especially second generation, you'll notice, there's a certain, uh, I guess, attribute that they think about when they think about music. It kind of blends in the same way. When they think about fashion, it blends in the same way. There might be a little bit of nuance depending on the ethnicity, but it actually there's a connective tissue. I think the smart marketers are the ones that know what that sensibility is and attach themselves to that and market their products through that. And then you're not doing multicultural marketing, you're doing lifestyle marketing. Folks like brands like Nike have been able to do it very well. Um, but they look at the core of what the culture is driving. So it's not really about hip hop, it's really about kind of a sensibility of, subculture music that connects everybody together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then when you start understanding that, you create that environment, you'll notice you'll have a very diverse, you know, audience listening to you, resounding with your brand or coming to your event, and you're like, wow, I really got a cross cultural engagement strategy here. I mean, I love music. I grew up with music. It's, the fabric of kind of thinking about, my past. It just makes me remember my past and my family. But I think a lot of people feel the same way about music. There's a cultural connection. And when you think about marketing, it does the same thing. It allows people to kind of gravitate it. It could be polarizing at the same time. So you have to be very balanced about how you do it. But my MTV days helped me understand how to leverage music to create brand affinity, and I've used that throughout my career at Microsoft. We did the same thing where I launched a device with Winston Yandel for the Hispanic community, to doing big events with a lot of celebrities like Pharrell and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
to going to Pepsi where their brand was built on being at the front of pop culture in the 80s and with music videos and Michael Jackson. So we started to leverage that again because we knew that that was a connective tissue, and it worked, and it works. So, I mean, a great example of what they just did was an amazing cross-cultural, lifestyle-based music engagement. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you know, they did they did a brand integration into Empire, where Empire sponsored the artist from the label in the show. So it was, you know, and it was part of it. And they created a commercial out of it. They used them as a talent in the commercial. They did a big event around it, and it was really everything that I'm talking about. They lived and breathed it. You know, my colleague who worked with me, Bosama St. John, went to Apple Music, and she's the SVP of marketing there. But there was another commercial she just did to promote Apple Music, where she had, you know, all these African American, you know, A-listers in the entertainment community, including Mary J. Blige, enjoying their music off of Apple Music, listening to Mark Anthony. You know, another example of cross-cultural. We all have these commonalities. We try to silo them by putting Latin people with Latin music. It doesn't work like that. It's really about embracing this lifestyle. Celebrities, you know, is the same formula. I don't know if celebrities work as much anymore as they used to. I think if you want to make a statement very quickly and leverage their brand equity to kind of get, you know, an awareness play for you guys, I think for a brand, I think that's the right way. But I think there's something richer now. I think it's those influencers that have millions of followers. For example, us older folk are like, you know, how do these guys have millions of fans or hundreds of thousands of fans? And when they walk down the street, young people know these people, who they are. To us, they're not celebrities, but they are, you know, they have a following and they have some type of cult following around whatever they do online. I think those are the guys that we have to start figuring out how to embrace better, is one aspect. And there's a lot of multicultural guys there, or there are a lot of folks that multicultural customers go to listen to, and they don't have to be multicultural. And we have to learn to deal with that balance. And then the second piece is content. I can't stress enough content. And why I say that is that, you know, people are now okay with not going after big time content. Before, it used to be like, what's the big show on ABC? Let's talk about it. Or what's the big show on HBO? Let's talk about it. Now there's so much diversity in content. You know, it could be the wolf pack on Netflix from Vice. You know, there's a subculture that knows about that, and they could talk about it intelligently. That's a way to engage authentically. Or it could be, you know, the Netflix show that just came out with Pablo Escobar, that one.
Narcos.
I mean, there's so much out there. So people are okay with getting content that's not coming from these big platforms. And if you could do it in an authentic way and start showing, you know, multicultural consumers and their real life stories, I think there's going to be a lot of power for that. And, you know, as we think about the changing landscape of entertainment and TV and these devices becoming the new way of engaging, you know, us folks that are creative and want to tell stories, we have a lot more opportunity. Keep on changing, keep on challenging convention, and know that, and understand the consumer. Like I won't discount how important it is to always understand your consumer and constantly being curious about what are the attributes of that consumer and how we can drive that. I think it's important because what I'm saying now could change, you know, a month from now, 2 months from now. Be up with what they're doing, be in it, and then figure out and be creative and change and challenge convention on how to engage them, because, you know, technology is doing it for you. So if you're not up on it, hence we're doing a hangout on Google right now and broadcasting. So
we're pretty progressive for old people, aren't we, Javier?
Yes, you are, specifically, because I remember you used to do this with print.
Yes, I did. Thank you for that shameless plug, Javier.
Exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank Javier Farfan, Vice President of Segment and Cultural Marketing at Verizon Wireless, for being with us here today. Javier, best to you and happy holidays.
All right, you too. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Okay, thanks again.